Hello, everyone. I'm Randy Hawthorne here, the executive editor of Nonprofit Hub, and it's time for today's talk. And today I'm super excited because Mazarine Treyz is here with us, and we're going to be talking about the future of the nonprofit sector. How are you doing?
I'm excited. How about you?
Always, always. You're always so fun. And I never know where these are going to go. And this is a broad topic, and we're going to have to condense it as much as we possibly can. But I would love, we were just talking right before we started recording, that 2020 has given us a lot of time to think. Lots of alone time to think about things. And Mazarine was saying that she was thinking a little bit about the future of the sector, and she has some thoughts on that. And so do I. So let's see if we align. I'm going to let you get started.
All right. So we know from the AP and Fast Company that potentially 40% of nonprofits next year could close their doors. So for your listeners, I think this should be something that's a bit of a wake-up call that potentially parts of our sector, such as how we get money or how we treat our employees, are broken.
Most definitely. Keep preaching.
Okay, I'll just keep talking. Well, if anyone follows my work, they know that I believe that we should basically treat our workers better. I'm a nonprofit workplace advocate, and so I believe we should have pensions. I believe we should be paying people more, and I believe in, that we shouldn't get punished for wanting to do good, essentially. And I feel like, unfortunately, through the pandemic, people have been let go, or other people have had like massive workloads happen. And in 2021, people are like, I hate 2020. But 2021 isn't going to be better unless we plan to make it better. And so we have to think about, what do we want to bring with us into the new year, and how do we, how do we think about our sector differently to make it a sector worth carrying through?
Yeah, I agree. We need to treat our people better. I always tell other executive directors that we're not competing for another nonprofit for our employees. We're competing with the best and most awesomest places, because don't we want those cool kids to come work for the nonprofit sector? Yes. And the only way we can do that is if we set it up so that we're not a turnstile that we turn over every couple of years because the really good people move on. So
right. Yeah, and we get research to back this up. So if anyone thinks, Mazarine, what are you talking about? I don't believe you. I've got science to back this up. So if you look at Donor-Centered Leadership by Penelope Burke and the Cygnus Research Group, you'll see 30 years of research that show that if you lose your major gift fundraiser year over year for 3 years running, you'll lose $600,000. And if you keep them, you'll raise over $500,000. So it's really in your best interest to keep your good fundraisers, train them, make them as good as they possibly can be, and ask them the crucial question, where do you really want to be in 5 years, and how can I help you get there?
Yeah, it's interesting how in most companies, the sales force is treated in such a way where they are handsomely rewarded for the work that they're doing, right? Because they're bringing the money in. Our sector kind of somewhat shames that a little bit. And it's donor driven. I know it is. And I know that there are some bad apples that always ruin this for our sector. And when our sector has a bad apple, it rots the entire bunch for a really long time. Mm-hmm. And that's not fair. I mean, there's it's no different than if a bank does something poorly. Only that bank is shamed, not the entire sector a lot of times. So it's just really interesting to me. And you mentioned something about, we just said it's donor driven. And so our donors oftentimes will say we need to keep our overhead low and all of that sort of thing. And overhead is humans almost exclusively in all companies. So thoughts on how we talk to our donors about that?
Good question. Our donors are here to help support our mission, and we're not here to be subservient to them. We're here to educate them about what it takes to achieve our mission. And because they can see the 990, I think, well, if you can measure it, then we should just be looking at your salary numbers, when actually what they should be asking is, how well are you achieving your mission? And that's a case by case, conversation by conversation that you have with individuals that are supporting you. And they may be getting, they might be like, well, you have to run it more like a business, like, great, you want us to run it more like a business? Then you need to pay people more if you want to have people that really know what they're doing. And so, one group that I think is doing a really good job of creating a better workplace for everyone is the Ontario Nonprofit Network. They are the main association in Canada for for nonprofits, and they're helping nonprofit workers get pensions. They're talking about decent work for women, and they have a whole series of checklists, which you can download on their website, which you can put in the show notes if you want to, about, how do we make a better workplace? Because this year, a lot of sector 70% women, a lot of female nonprofit workers had to go to part-time, had to take care of the house, as well as, potentially not being safe at home. And they are addressing that, as well as the Canadian Women's Foundation. They're talking about what happens when, women can't actually do their jobs as much because they're not making as much money. And so it's just like the whole sector starts to wind down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's not like we don't have a lot of foundations here that can't take a different approach and maybe think through some of that stuff and take some examples from that and see if there's ways that we can bolster up the sector, because we like you said, 2021 there's not going to be a magic eraser at the end of 2020 that will reset everything. That would be fun if we had a whiteboard reset, just at the end.
Yeah, right.
But
some nonprofits did great this year. One of my clients raised $2 million, which is more than they'd ever raised before.
Right.
Some nonprofits had a wonderful year, but the problem is, it's like our economy is just like, so how do we process all of the grief, the rage, all the things that happened this year, the climate change stuff, the Black Lives Matter stuff? Like, how do we encompass this and keep our missions relevant? And I feel like nonprofits that are only focusing on, let's say, food insecurity, might need to broaden a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, because there's so much more it's coming to light this year for a lot of people from the dominant culture.
Right. A lot of what the nonprofit works on are the systems that have been put in place that I hope that we're going to be looking at as a society as well over the next number of years, and hopefully the nonprofit sector can help through creating better systems so that fewer people are put in positions of poverty and all of those sorts of things. So, Mazarine, I could go on for an hour talking to you about this subject. It's a big thing. I'd probably get myself in trouble by the end of it. I'd lose my nonprofit button or whatever, but I really appreciate you being here for today's talk. And if any of you would like to be featured, we also feature nonprofits who are doing good things or facing some challenges. We would love to talk to you too. So just hit us up on Facebook and keep watching today's talk. Thanks for joining us. Now go out and do good.